Good evening, everybody. I hope you're all well. Thank you for joining this evening for this Bluetongue update. I'm Philippa Page. I'm president of Sheep Vet Society and a sheep vet, and I'm chairing this session today. We've got some great speakers with lots of information, so I won't spend too long. Please just remember that the session's being recorded, and there is a chat function on the side that you can put your questions in as we go through the presentations, and then at the session we will have a Q&A session for you to ask some questions, and we will try and get around to them all. So we have Gordon Hickman speaking this evening, and we have Natalie Sampson, we've got Ed Simmons, and we've got Rui Cucino. We're going to start now with Gordon, who's head of exotic disease and policy. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm hoping that you're going to share my slides. So good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for inviting me back. So I'm just going to give you a very quick update of the position. It's predominantly in England, but I will just touch on the Welsh numbers, although Natalie is going to cover that in a lot more detail and the implications there. So for the current vector season, and that technically started on the 22nd of March, although most of the cases didn't actually get confirmed until into July, we've had 108 cases, of which 106 of those were Bluetongue 3, and we've now had 2 cases of Bluetongue 8. The most recent one was confirmed late last night, and we announced it on the website today. We've also, on those 106 farms, had 150 animals affected, but I don't want you to think that that's the only animals that have been affected, because where there's been a number of sick animals on a farm, we've tended to limit it to 3 animals that are tested. So there could well be more on those farms. So don't read too much into the low within herd or flock prevalence. Those are split up. The majority are cattle. So 66% of them have been cattle, 32% have been sheep, and 2% have been farmed deer. And just a reminder, we're not doing any active surveillance in England. If you remember last year, a lot of the cases that we confirmed were picked up by our, I'll call it edge surveillance. So looking at the borders around our zones as we gradually spread out through England. And in the majority of cases, they were in a single animal. The largest number on a flock or herd was 7 animals, and that was in 2 cases. Next slide. So this is the case map, which if you want to find it, you can see it on gov.uk, and that's got all of the cases on. And you'll see that there's a large cluster down in Cornwall. That's by far and away the highest county, the next being in the sort of the Derbyshire area. So you can see a number of clusters there. Next slide. So in terms of, I can't see it now, in terms of individual positive animals, just to give you a little bit of a flavour, 3/4 of them were adults, so 75%, 17% were under 12 months of age, and in 7% of cases we don't know the ages of them from the information that we have. Again, just a little bit of a feel, nearly 60% were females, but 11% of them we don't know the sex of those animals. Just trying to give you a little bit of a flavour to help give you a picture of what we're finding so far. On the Bluetongue 8 cases, so as I say, we've only had 2 of them. The first case that we confirmed, and both of them are in Cornwall. They're about 80 kilometres apart. One was an 8-year-old ewe, just used for grazing, and the other was a 9-year-old milking cow, relatively recently calved. So that's a bit of a feel for what we found the animals in. Just going on to the Bluetongue 8, next slide please. This was not unexpected. This is just a map of France with the relative density of the outbreaks of Bluetongue 8. So in France, there's Bluetongue 8 and Bluetongue 3 circulating, and you'll see there's a lot of cases in the Brittany area, Normandy areas of France. If you put the next slide up, please. And using our colleagues in the Met Office and with Pirbright, we do look at some of these plume incursion maps, and I've just put up there two maps, 18th of September and the 14th of September, around about the time when we suspect the at least the sheep was infected, and you'll see that there were quite a lot of cases where wind-borne plumes of midges could come from infected areas or affected areas of France. So again, not unexpected to find it. So far, we've only found it in 2 cases, but we will be doing a little bit more of winter surveillance. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about how we've detected or method of detection. The vast majority have been picked up through clinical disease, so report cases. So this is where farmer or vet has reported in suspect clinical signs, and that's in 83% of cases. 10 pre-movement cases, 5 private tests. We're never quite sure of the reason for those private tests, but at least one of them we think was a prior to germinal product collection. 1 post-movement test and 1 tracing from an infected premises, and 1 was a pre-export test. That was actually a germinal product test that the germinal product was going to be exported. Next slide. As expected, the peak of cases was in September. We're hoping we're on a little bit of a decline. But that's just, if you like, an outline epidemic curve. So it peaked sort of towards the end of September. We're not quite sure this week whether we'll get any more, but as you see from the website, we confirmed 9 cases yesterday. So we're still getting of the region of, 15 to 20 cases per week confirmed. So that's a summary of what we've got so far. Next slide, please. Just a reminder of the zones that we've got in place in England. So the whole of England is a restricted zone, and you can move animals within that restricted zone without a license. Technically, there is a general license available, but any animals moving out of that zone into Wales or Scotland do need to take advantage of the licenses that are in place. And I'm sure Nat will say a little bit more about the licenses for moves into Wales and some of the restrictions there. In terms of reporting, next slide, please. Just a reminder that this is still a notifiable disease and reported in the usual ways, please. It's in all of our best interest to properly understand the geographic distribution of this disease and also the clinical presentation of that. We are certainly seeing more cases in dairy cattle at the moment, but that may be just the demographics of the area that it's in. If you're in England and you report disease, you'll be given an ERZ code, and that will mean that when you submit samples through your private vet to the Pirbright laboratory, you won't get charged for the diagnostic testing of that. Farmers are still asked to pick up the cost of sampling with their private vet. And finally, last slide from me, just a reminder that if Bluetongue 3 is confirmed, we won't be placing any of your animals under restriction, and we won't be placing the premises under restriction. although there may be restrictions on you moving animals from that premises into Wales or Scotland, no restrictions for moving within England. If it's Bluetongue 8, or God forbid we get another serotype, then we will initially place restrictions on the premises until we've done further investigations. But hopefully that was a useful catch up of where we were at in England. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Gordon, for that update. That was really helpful. We'll see if there's any questions as we move through. Okay, next we have Natalie Sampson, the Deputy Chief Veterinary Officer for Wales. I'll hand over to you, Natalie.
Thank you. Just bear with me while I try and take control.
Yeah.
So I think I've got control now. Doesn't seem to be working, Kyle. Oh no, there we go. It's a bit slow. Okay. So many thanks, everybody. I'm Natalie Sampson. I am the Deputy Chief Vet of Wales, as Philippa says. I haven't coordinated with Gordon, and he went first, which means that there might be a little bit of crossover on some of the slides, and I will try and whiz through where he's already told you that information. So if we start. So here we go. Some of this is already repeated. 108 cases in total. Of those, we have had 4 BTB3 cases in Wales, and as of the latest update today, in terms of vaccinations figures in Wales, only vets have reported vaccination of 232,000 animals, and animal keepers have reported vaccination of 153, nearly 154,000 animals. For those of you in the know, you will know that the reporting discrepancy is because vets report when they sell it and keepers report when they give it, and there's often a gap in between. Okay. So in terms of where we are in seasonal risk, and obviously for me it is specifically around Wales, we all know that midges tend to be more active and feed in the spring, summer and autumn, and midges do need continued warm temperatures for Bluetongue virus replication within them. We are starting to see the temperatures reduce in Wales, which will extend the time the vectors need to complete the incubation periods, and with time it will reduce the likelihood of sustained transmission, which is good. That's what we all want. So if we go into some of the detail, which is I'm sure what everyone is interested in, on the 21st of September, aligning with those reduction in temperatures and the average time, the average entry into low transmission period in Wales, we did relax some of the Bluetongue 3 restrictions. And as a summary, following those relaxations, all animals that are vaccinated with Bluetongue 3 can move from England, the restricted zone, to Wales to live under a general licence. Unvaccinated animals still had to have pre-movement tests and a specific licence, and we allowed animals to move directly to slaughter under general licence, whether they were vaccinated or unvaccinated. Obviously with the caveat that if an animal was showing any clinical signs on the day of transport, they could not move. So to put that into a little bit more detail for you, we will have shown versions of this diagram before. We have 2 now, one for vaccinated and one for unvaccinated. And just to reiterate, this is the changes from the 21st of September, so don't take into account the temporary control zone that we have subsequently put in, and I will talk about that shortly. So you can see here, there is a lot of free movement, which is green, and some blue movement as well. An unvaccinated stock, you'll see some red, and the red is when you need a pre-movement test, so much easier to move vaccinated animals around than unvaccinated from the 21st of September. Okay, so let's move a little bit more into Wales and what is happening with those 4 cases. So we have had 4 premises. This is, I apologise, I couldn't blow up this map in better. They're tiny yellow dots for the eagle eyes of you, and those on phones won't be able to see it at all, I imagine. But in summary, we had 2 premises that we confirmed on Friday, the 26th of September, and 2 premises that we confirmed a few days later on Tuesday, the 30th of September. There are 3 in Powys, 2 of which are on the border, 1 of which is more central Powys, and 1 on the border in Monmouthshire. So we go into a little bit more detail as to those 4 cases. They are in order of confirmation as opposed to order of location. So the first in Powys was a large beef fattening unit. It was picked up from a movement test, and the animal, the positive animal, had recently been purchased from another Welsh holding, so that's movement related. The second was in a holding near Chepstow in Monmouthshire, a much smaller beef suckler herd, a bovine with clinical signs that tested positive. And further investigations that we do on all confirmed infected premises, or IPs as we call them, detected 6 more positives. When we looked at the detail behind those results, we were able to confirm that disease was circulating in the local environment, which meant that we put a temporary control zone into place on the 1st of October, and I will come on to that shortly. We return to the other 2 premises in Powys, another beef suckler herd with 35 animals with many more sheep, again a clinical animal that tested positive. We have investigations and further sampling ongoing, but to date we have had 3 more positives on that premises. But in contrast to Monmouthshire, when we looked at the details of those results, they do not confirm local circulation currently of disease. And the final one is in Powys, another beef suckler herd, and that is a traced farm, so related to one of the others. And for all of these, I just want to stress that investigations, tracings and samplings continue, and the individual premises are under restrictions. So on the Monmouthshire case, we did put in a temporary control zone because we picked up local circulation. Some of you will have picked up zones before when they're quite circular, but you'll see this one isn't so much because there's a border. And as you can see, it literally sits right on the border. So what are we doing in and out of that zone? But just as a reminder, a temporary control zone, or TCZ, is an area where we think active disease is circulating and there's a risk. We license moves into the Wales free area as a risk mitigation. We are differentiating between vaccinated and unvaccinated stock. And we do recognise that less assurance is needed to moves to England in the RZ, but there will still be conditions. This is the moving diagram to try and put this into visuals for you. And you'll notice that there are some yellow and some orange. Yellow means general license and we're moving it, but the orange means we're still drafting the licenses. So this is very much a presentation in progress, and in the background, the team are working incredibly hard to get those licenses and conditions up as quickly as possible in priority order for all of our farmers to be able to continue their businesses as best they can despite this. We've done again, we've done the same when we're looking at the TCZ and England. So the first one was the TCZ in the free area, or the Wales that's not the TCZ, and the second was the TCZ in England RZ. And you'll notice that we are prioritising some of those moves again. Okay. So a lot of this we've put out from clinical signs, so please do continue to keep out the clinical signs and keep an eye out for clinical signs and report it to your vet, talk to your vet. On a positive note, we have been able to negate 28 of your report cases following sampling and testing since July, so that's good, and it does show that the surveillance, the passive surveillance is working. So where are we going in terms of next steps in Wales? Well, we're continuing to keep our policy under regular review. We've done that throughout the summer and we will continue to do that. We continue with our investigations, our tracings and further sampling to understand what's happening with the disease, and any further disease control measures that we put into place or remove will be based on emerging evidence. So that includes the presence or extent of active circulation of virus. And for us, it's dynamic, which means we are doing changes, and those changes can sometimes be quite rapid. So please do follow our media channels. And finally, a plug, I'm sure most of us said, there is still time to vaccinate to mitigate the clinical impact of disease in your animals. My next one was just some links, which I think Gordon put up as well. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalie. That was great. Okay, and those links we can circulate around again, and they'll be present at the end as well. Okay, right. We're going to move on now to Ed Simmons, who's British Cattle Veterinary Association board member, and he's a vet down in the southwest. And he's going to share his presentation shortly and give some experiences of recent cases down there.
Thanks, Philippa. Yeah, I was just going to give kind of a bit of a history trip of what we've done as a practice. So I practice in North Somerset, just south of Bristol. So we were prompted as a practice to have a practice meeting on the 10th of March, and that was shortly after the zone moved into South Somerset. So farmers started to get concerned about it. Vaccine was available, and we thought, yeah, this is the time we need to start talking about it. Partly prompted by, I think, one of these webinars where Fiona Lovett showed the European picture the year after some early outbreaks, and we thought, you know, let's try and hop on this. So we had an absolutely packed village hall, and we had a lot of early orders. So a lot of guys that and girls that were motivated to come along, and I think just about everybody at that meeting probably took some vaccine. We were then faced with some stock outages, which hindered us, and some people then changed their mind, and it's just slowed up vaccine getting into some animals. But then it is now back. So we followed up all those early orders, and some more followed. And sort of over the summer months, I guess we didn't really sell an awful lot of vaccine, other than those that wanted to trade into Scotland or Wales were motivated to go and get their sheep and cattle vaccinated as and when. Okay. So we sold in the region of about 14,000 doses, which I thought was a pretty good uptake at the time. And of all those doses, I had one client report to me that some of her sheep were lethargic the following day. And that was it. And those doses went into a broad range of farms, from small hobby farms to dairy farms, robotic farms, high yielding herds, all year round calving. So, you know, I kind of feel that if we were going to see adverse effects, then we would have seen them on a lot of these cows and sheep. So yeah, on to the next slide. So I have some pedigree sheep, and I was vaccinating my Charolais prior to AI in July, and I suddenly thought, crikey, it's only 10 days away, the AI date, but it was too late. I'd already jabbed them, because, you know, there's talk about male infertility or even transient. Anyway, I tested the ram at AI date, and he was absolutely grand. Absolutely no problems at all, and all my shearlings were jabbed, and they've all been sold off the farm now with absolutely no fertility issues. So anecdotal, but nonetheless, I was glad they're vaccinated, and they go on and hopefully do well. Thank you. Next slide. So as I said, we prescribed in all year round calving herds. We, you know, where we're on the farms weekly watching fertility, we didn't see any increase related to vaccination in abortions or reabsorptions, and no knock in conception rates as a result of vaccination. Next slide. So is there still time to vaccinate? And obviously now in the southwest, with these cases bubbling up in Cornwall and up through, then absolutely there's still time to vaccinate. We are still prescribing some vaccine now, but it's very important in terms of preventing the potential of stillbirths and dummy calves. And I would encourage all the farmers on here listening to speak to your vet and not to social media for factual advice. Next slide. I'm done. So yeah, I'm happy to answer questions later on.
Okay, thank you very much, Ed, for that. Yes, thank you. I should make it clear how to put questions in. I didn't really do that fully at the start. I just said in the chat box. So in the chat box, there's a little speech bubble with a question mark in it. So if anyone got any questions, click on that, and you should be able to pop them in there. and then we can take those questions at the end. Okay, right, we will move on now to Rui Cucino, who's the Deputy Veterinary Officer in Jersey, to share the experiences there, which I'm assuming are going to be really interesting. So I will hand over to Rui, if you're there.
Yes. Hi all. Thank you. My name is Rui Cucino. I'm the Deputy Chief Vet Officer in Jersey, and I'll just share with you our experience with Bluetongue vaccination this year. Next slide, please. So first of all, just geography, because not only to know, well, for those that don't, where Jersey is, and but the impact that it has for the epidemiology of Bluetongue. So Jersey is one of the Channel Islands, a crown dependency of the United Kingdom. And geographically, we are much closer to France than the United Kingdom, and that has a very significant impact for us in the way that we approach this disease. Next slide, please. Right, so the background for vaccination, it was basically the situation in continental Europe and particularly in France throughout 2024. Next slide, please. So in 2023, as you'll know, Bluetongue serotype 3 was first disclosed in the Netherlands. By the end of that year, the first few cases had been reported in Belgium. And then the 2024 season started quite lively in the Netherlands, with quick spread to Belgium, and for us an important development on the 30th of July 2024. France has a suspicion of Bluetongue 3 in the border near Belgium, which is confirmed in early August. Next slide, please. So that triggered us to monitor closely the situation in France and see the developments. It was going relatively as predicted up until mid-October. So there was quite a lot of spread towards of disease near the border. It moved slowly, crept slowly towards the west of France and towards the south. But then in mid-October, there was a sudden jump into Sartre in France. This is already part or close to Normandy. This was likely due to movement of livestock, whether legal or illegal. But this would not be explained by simple midge movement. So by this time, that triggered us to consider an active surveillance program in Jersey. We made preparation for that. Next slide, please. However, the situation did not progress as bad as we were fearing up until the very end of November, when suddenly France reported a case in La Manche, in Pio, in sheep, right on the coast facing Saint-Malo Bay, which is where our islands are. And this is very close to the situation, to the epidemiological situation in France by the end of the midge active season of 2024. Next slide, please. So it wasn't just Bluetongue 3, which was a concern for us. It was also Bluetongue 8, which was spreading in the south and the west of France, and also enzootic hemorrhagic disease. Next slide, please. So we made the decision then in the winter of 2024 that we were going to go ahead or try to push for a vaccination program. And and as well as background, in Jersey, the majority of susceptible population are cattle. Dairy cattle is the main livestock industry over here, although we have small flocks of sheep and goats as well. The the other benefit, so apart, we're an island, which obviously puts a barrier between ourselves and other areas in Europe. The other advantage as well is that we don't have any wild ruminant populations in Jersey. So deer, for example, are not a concern. There is a zoo, but the zoo doesn't have any ruminant species. So anyway, the decision was made to go ahead with a mandatory vaccination program for all cattle, sheep, and goats registered on the island. The budget, the initial budget that we made was a significant program for our team. It was the first time we did such a large scale vaccination program in Jersey, and we had to make a bid to Treasury to make it work. The decision was made that we would manage centrally the vaccination program. So we would purchase vaccines, we would manage the allocation of stock and the storage, and we would carry out as well administration in many of the farms. In the cattle sector, they're better organized, so we agreed with the farmers to license, to train and license people to carry out vaccination. But in the sheep and goat sector and the hobby farmers, that wasn't possible. Next slide, please. So why did we go for a centralized delivery model? So it wasn't just Bluetongue 3 that we were concerned. It was a program for Bluetongue 3, Bluetongue 8, and enzootic hemorrhagic disease. Unfortunately, these vaccines are not available on a multi-serotype platform. So there are 3 different vaccines from 3 different manufacturers. So the logistics are much more complicated. This way as well, we ensured a larger purchase order to the manufacturers, and that way we could secure supply better and better price. We were also looking to get as much as buy-in from farmers as much as possible. So we were trying to reduce inconvenience, and this was all about getting vaccination coverage high. There was as well a positive externality that we identified from doing things this way, which was to actually do a census and do an update and do a reality check on our registration records on island. Next slide, please. So we engaged with the industry early on in December 20. Well, to be honest, we had been engaging with them throughout 2024 about how the situation was progressing. So in December 2024, we made, let's say, officially the case that we thought that vaccination was the best way, and that in order to do vaccination, it would have to be a blanket and mandatory, rather than let it go on a patchwork way. That was our best chance to prevent introduction of disease in Jersey. If we went for a blanket vaccination, and if we made sure in particular that all cattle were vaccinated, not only because the vaccine, well, one of the vaccines does prevent viremia in cattle, so that has an important epidemiological effect on the dynamics of the disease. It also protects the other species in the territory. So we contacted the vaccine manufacturers in January, February, to discuss what was available. Made the case to the Treasury in February, and gained and were granted the funds by end of February. Purchase orders in March. Then it was a nightmare with the logistics of the shipping and delivery. Vaccines were only here by mid of April, and then Easter got in the way. So it was really second week of May that we were able to get vaccination operations to get on the ground. We were worried about that the midge active season was already in play, but fortunately the reports from the DEFRA reports at this point were still indicating that we hadn't crossed over the thresholds of successive days with high temperatures for disease to start spreading. So we were able to finish vaccination operations in mid-July with, I mean, because it wasn't just us vaccinating and a lot of the records were coming from the farms, we estimate that it was by June that we achieved an 80% coverage rate. But it might have been a little bit earlier or a little bit later. So all in all, I think we were able to finish it at a good in time for peak midge activity and peak risk in Jersey. Next slide, please. So results, we were able to achieve a 92% coverage rate. Basically all animals were vaccinated except the underage ones. There was a lot of sheep handling from myself and members of my team. Below you can see an extract from our internal records where we were keeping tallies of vaccination records. So for BTV3, the coverage rate is slightly higher simply because the vaccine is recommended from ages of 1 month old onwards, and for BTV8 it's a little bit slightly older animals. And in terms of results, we haven't had, touch wood, any clinical cases in Jersey as of today. We've had, there were farmers following vaccination reporting possible abortions and concerned about some animals going ill. We took samples and we made investigations, and the only thing that we've been able to find out, apart from positive serology for Bluetongue, which is expected, was to find signs of Schmallenberg, which in any case we already knew. That's why we know that Jersey is vulnerable to this kind of midge-borne disease. We do have Schmallenberg circulating at low levels in the islands. So far, no cases. The fertility and abortion remains well within the normal results. We have been investigating any abnormal cases of mortality. We've made sure to be present. We don't have. I'm quite confident we don't have clinical disease. Whether or not we might have virus circulating, because the vaccines don't promise complete viremic suppression in sheep and goats, it could be that we might have a little bit of virus circulating there, although I find it unlikely. And epidemiologically, we covered the cattle, which is really important. So yeah, no disease. Next slide, please. Comparing with other countries, Belgium has adopted the same policy as Jersey. So they went for blanket mandatory vaccination program. They rolled it out pretty much at the same time as us, but they had some problems sourcing the vaccine. And initially they were hoping to complete their vaccination program on the 1st of June, but then they delayed it until 1st of September or 1st of October. And that had to do with issues with supply. Guernsey, I should have said, the colleagues from Guernsey, we did a joint purchase order for vaccines in Jersey and Guernsey. It's just that Guernsey decided to go for a voluntary approach rather than mandatory, unlike us, and their coverage rates are lower than ours, but it has been a success there as well. They've got no cases reported. Luxembourg, because of its proximity to Belgium, went for a voluntary vaccination program. They are not reporting any cases. Netherlands, no cases as well there. It's reportedly vaccination rates there are quite high, which is understandable. They got hit really hard in 23 and 24. And then on top of that, you have to consider that, you know, there has to be some natural immunity developing there. And then Germany, there are 556 cases if reported in the whole country. It's a bit complicated to understand the policy over there. I think it's more it has been delegated to state level. There isn't a blanket vaccination program. And in France, which is what really the main concern for Jersey. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah, sorry. Before that, this is just to say that in Belgium, the coverage rate is similar to Jersey for Bluetongue 3, but lower for Bluetongue 8 and AHDB. This is an extract from an internal report that just, I mean, my point is that they probably spent a lot more money in their mandatory vaccination program, and the vaccination rates are either comparable or slightly lower than ours. Although the final result has been exactly the same. They haven't reported any cases. Next slide, please. Right. So in France, Bluetongue serotype 3, there is no government subsidy this year. There was last year, but not in 2025. And the vaccination is voluntary. And as a result of that, you're seeing a significant outbreak over there. There's quite a large, Gordon has already alluded to this. There's a significant outbreak in the northwest of France. This is the area of France that was very much unaffected by Bluetongue in 2024. It was the last area of France that hadn't seen any cases yet. So the animal populations were still quite naive there this year, and vaccination rates were low, and therefore you saw this cluster of cases. This means that Jersey, it's virtually certain. I mean, especially considering what has happened in Cornwall, it's virtually certain that we've had several incursions of infected midges in Jersey this year from Brittany and Normandy of Bluetongue 3. Next slide, please. Bluetongue 8, it's a similar picture, but what I would say is that you know, France adopted a subsidized vaccination program for sheep only, which only started on the 1st of July. So they started quite late with their vaccination campaign for Bluetongue 8, but there are a lot less cases than Bluetongue 3. So even if you start late, it's still worthwhile doing something, because you have seen a much more significant deceleration of the Bluetongue outbreak in France of Bluetongue 8 than Bluetongue 3, and most of these cases that you see here reported happened before July. So France had Brittany got hit with Bluetongue in the beginning of the summer, most of the cases. And I think that's my last slide. So, I mean, the long story short, the message is definitely vaccination is worthwhile. There you definitely see a difference on the ground when you adopt the vaccination policy, and you're able to achieve good levels of coverage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Roo. That was really interesting. Thank you for that presentation. Okay, we've got a couple of questions that were posed, I think, before the webinar in the chat function. So just to remind, we will talk about those in a moment, but please do put any in there if there's anything that you'd like to ask. The first one I think we'll go to is, can you vaccinate in the face of disease? So is it worth suggesting this to clients who have had confirmed cases within the herd? And I think we discussed this earlier, but Ed, maybe I'll hand over to you for that one.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Philippa. Yes is the short answer. I would absolutely encourage vaccination, but there is a caveat that once we know we have, well, at any time there's a possibility of animals that are carrying the virus. So we need to be careful when vaccinating multiple animals that we don't move the virus from animal to animal via the needle. So the licensed vaccines state that the needle should be changed between each animal. So that is as it should be. Your own vet may be able to advise you around that and any other practices that will reduce the risk, but certainly it's possible. But you have to bear in mind that with cattle, they'll need 2 doses and then 3 weeks after the second dose to get immunity. But yeah, I still think it's sensible, and absolutely no doubt in sheep that it's very sensible.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ed. There's some immunity related questions. Firstly, about the vaccine, I suppose. When do we think antibody levels are likely to wane? Do we know? And when should they be advised to revaccinate? Would be one question. And then there is another one on there about, do we know how much immunity animals get from natural infection?
Coming to me again. Yeah. So from that, I would expect good immunity from natural infection, and the vaccine, the revaccination schedule for the vaccines is not yet determined. So we would expect that it should be annual, but we don't know. So obviously you want to make sure they're protected for the risk period. So generally most animals that were vaccinated this year will be protected through the high risk period, and will then, by the spring, we should know more information, or early spring we should know more information.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Does anybody else want to add to that, add to what Ed said there? If any of the other speakers are there on the, if the speakers put their cameras on, that would be great, if that's okay, please. Thank you.
I would, I can add that I'm working on the assumption, I'm working on assumption that the immunity will be lasting at least 12 months. For that's how we're making planning for the 2026, early planning for 2026 here.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Roo. Okay, this may be another vet question, I'm guessing. Can the BTV3 vaccine be administered at the same time as any other vaccine?
Yes.
Okay, can you add any further information?
We did it.
Okay.
We did it with no adverse effects.
Okay, what vaccines did you inject? Did you administer it with?
So as per vaccination program, we were vaccinating for Bluetongue 3 and Bluetongue 8 in sheep and goats, and in the case of cattle, we were excuse me, we were vaccinated for BTV3, BTV8, and AHDB, enzootic hemorrhagic disease, and that was 3 vaccines, 2 jabs, 3 weeks apart, all at the same time in cattle.
Okay. Cattle. Okay, that's interesting. I think we try to follow whatever is best described on the data sheets, and being that it's quite a new vaccine, I suppose we try and advise to not give with other vaccines, but yet we haven't got that information, have we? You've got much more experience, so that's interesting to hear there, Roo.
We inquired with the with the vaccine manufacturers at the time if we could go, and they were saying that obviously with the caveat that they didn't have the data yet, but they were indicating that the only advice, and that was the advice we took, was just to ensure that the inoculation sites were well separated. So one of the vaccines, so in cattle, let me see, the Bluetongue was intramuscular, so we were jabbing on each side of the rump, and then the AHDV was a subcutaneous, and that was being done, in the around the flank of the animal. And in the case of sheep, it was 2 jabs subcutaneous, so it was each side of the animal.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Ed, anything to add on that? What have you advised in practice?
I kind of, probably off the data sheet, because I think the data sheet would say it's not licensed in conjunction with any other vaccine, but I'm mindful in the practicalities. I'd rather they got the vaccine into the sheep or the cattle than didn't, and multiple handlings often pose more risk and more problems than not. So I would encourage vaccination, full stop. And plenty of my clients have used alongside clostridial vaccines and things, and with no ill effects.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Right, I'm just trying to look at some of the other questions whilst I sift through them. I just had a question about surveillance myself, I guess. Will we be looking at serology of animals in Wales maybe, or England, over the winter to look at where it may have spread, or how far it's travelled? Is there any plans to do that? Maybe that's to Natalie or Gordon.
Well, if I kick off for England, so we're not planning on doing any serology. So we will be doing our normal annual winter surveillance, but we'll only be looking for PCR, and we'll be looking at by PCR, and we'll be looking for it in cattle only, and we'll be looking along the south coast from Cornwall up through to Kent. But because in cattle you can pick up a PCR signal 5 to 6 months after infection, we'll still pick up historical infection. And serology, you never really know which year it was, whether it's vaccinated or anything else like that. So we'll still get a pretty good prevalence, I think, from that survey, looking at a 95/5 surveillance strategy.
Okay, thank you, Gordon. Natalie, is there any Welsh information on that?
Yeah, of course. And apologies, I keep looking away because my Dalmatian is telling me it's dinner time. And that's all it is. So yes, similar to Gordon, we're looking at doing some winter surveillance through PCR. And of course, we do have a current TCZ in place, and we have got some confirmed IPs. And with that in mind, of course, we will also be doing the surveillance, the active surveillance around those locations that might pick it up. I think David also had a question that sort of relates to Gordon and myself, which is, if you have a BTB3 positive confirmed on your holding, there are no movement restrictions in place. And my response is, it depends where you are, David, very much so. So Gordon will obviously answer for England, but in Wales, yes, as it stands, if you have a confirmed BT3 positive on your holding, there will be restrictions placed on your holding while investigations are undertaken.
Okay, thank you, Natalie, for picking that one up out of the chat.
And I guess just to confirm what I said, in England, that for Bluetongue 3, it's different for other serotypes, because we would restrict them and do those investigations like Nat said would go on in Wales, but we don't restrict the animal, we don't restrict the premises, but you would be expected, of course, to I don't know what the word is, but if asked, you would be expected to tell people that that animal has been positive, and clearly some of the movement licenses mean that you can't move infected animals, and you cannot move an animal that is showing clinical signs suggestive of Bluetongue.
Yeah, Yes. Okay. Thank you. There's a question that you may have mentioned in the presentation, but I can't remember. Have any of the cases that have been identified so far been vaccinated animals?
Yes. I'm pretty sure that 2 of them were.
Yes.
One was in a very recently vaccinated animal, and one was a private test for both were in sheep, and both was in a had been vaccinated back in March, and had absolutely no clinical signs, but was positive by PCR when a private test was taken.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Gordon. Natalie, the Welsh cases?
None of those were vaccinated.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I think there is a question here. Is there any permanent effects on fertility and general health after infection and recovery? So that's not after vaccination, but that's after infection and after natural infection.
Yes. Yeah, I go back to the myths and myth busting. People were saying about infertility and vaccinated stock, but there's no doubt if they were infected, they would definitely be infertile. You know, without too much doubt, they'd be infertile. So there would be long-lasting effects should they recover in unvaccinated sheep.
Okay, so that really adds to the positive of vaccinating, doesn't it, to prevent that permanent permanent health status or not, as the case may be. Okay, thank you. Okay, let me just see if I've got any further ones, further questions that I'm not or missing. I think that's many. Oh, there's just one question here that I think, well, I know we're getting close to the end now, but do we think that the BTV3 cases on the south coast were incursions from France, or were they spread from English midges or English stock?
I think the straight answer is we don't know and we can't tell. I mean,
Yeah.
Along the south coast, they could be either. I think the cases up in the sort of the Derbyshire area, and probably the cases in Oxford and the home counties, almost certainly overwintering. The ones on the south coast, you just can't tell. I think the ones in Cornwall, yeah, that would have been obviously an incursion. But when you get to the Isle of Wight or Kent and East Sussex, it's probably a combination of both. I guess we'll never know. I mean, the sequencing of these viruses, it's 99.8% the same as the virus in Germany, France, and the Netherlands. So you can't tell even from the sequencing, whether it's an English virus or an imported virus, as it were.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, I think that we've covered most of those, the questions that have occurred in the chat, and if there's any that we missed that we pick up after, we'll try and make sure whoever's asked those gets some answers, or we can put the answers out there. I would like to thank our speakers for your valuable presentations and experience in this notifiable disease. It's very difficult because it's changing constantly, and it makes presenting up-to-date information difficult with accurate answers. So I appreciate what you've been able to present this evening, and I'm sure that the cases will be different again as we move into the autumn and winter. But thank you very much to our speakers. Thank you very much for you watching and posing those questions. And also to the farmers and the people supporting the Battle Bluetongue, all the different farming organisations and veterinary organisations. We really do appreciate it. Okay, so I will end the webinar there, and the recording will be available after this evening. Thank you, everybody.